And tonight's topic is about controlling real estate, right? Tonight's topic is about wholesaling. And for those that have never been to a grid meeting before, who's never been to a grid meeting before? I'm curious. Okay, cool. So some of you are new. So the way we've structured this is that we want to give you over the course of the year the full life cycle of what a real estate investor's life looks like. Everything from wholesaling in the beginning of the year, something very foundational for you guys to understand, all the way to being the bank towards the end of the year, right? Who wants to be the bank one day and maybe have a family bank? Like, I know I do. I want to have a family bank. It's part of my vision, right? And so what we do is then give you guys as much information as we have and as much information, collective intelligence as there is in the room for you guys to be able to go out and do deals. And for many years, people would always ask me, why are you training your competition? Like, why are you sharing all this information? And we never saw it that way. We always said, what we want to be able to do is show you guys how to do the business because we want to do business with you guys. We want to JV with you. We want to partner with you. We want to borrow money from you, lend money to you. Like, we want to sell you properties. We want to buy properties. It's just what's so cool about this business is that it really is, there is no competition. It's co-opetition, right? The rehabber needs the wholesaler. The wholesaler needs some bird dogs out there and real estate agents, right? Landlords need property managers. And so there's this symbiotic relationship that we all have. And it's one of the reasons why Mark and I always wanted to bring people together to have these conversations, right? So for those that are just new, just know that you can, if you come every month, by the end of the year, you're going to feel like you have a really, really strong foundation. But I always say that all the knowledge that you want is literally just a cup of coffee away, right? What we want you guys to be able to do is meet the other investors that are in here or the other people that are in here and just grab a cup of coffee, right? We're going to allow everybody to do a quick intro because we believe that the power is in the relationships and the network. And what we want you to do is pay attention to who's who in the room because you might be looking for money for a deal and somebody might say, I'm a private lender, I'm a hard money lender, and you could go meet them afterwards, right? And so let's start. We normally start, actually, you always come last, right? But let's start with you, Beckett. Give everybody just a quick who you are, what you do. Keep it concise.
I can't do that, Rob. I'm not good at concise. Concise is not my bag. Anybody's ever met me before, but I'll give it a shot. Mark Beckett, Rob's partner. We've been doing this for 14 years. I run the construction and investment side of our business. We do pre-sale renovations for our pre-sale clients, the occasional kitchen and bath. Anybody needs a contractor, feel free to let me know. Rob, you mentioned you run the agent side of the business. We have interests in rental properties, short-term rentals, Airbnb, Simply Funded, which is a lending platform. If anybody needs money for any of their deals, we'd be happy to fund them. Please chat us up about that if you're interested. And then all the other good stuff that you said. And if Rob didn't mention it before, you're an attorney?
No.
Rob didn't mention it before, you're an accountant?
No.
You have particular legal or financial advice to dispense tonight?
No.
No. We're not attorneys, we're not bankers, and don't blame us if it all goes pear-shaped. But it probably won't, right? Well, we're just here talking about how it is we approach our business. And we do it because we get to meet a lot of cool people, so that's the point. We'll talk about our thing tonight. After we're done with this conversation, right? It's not a pitch, it's not a guru thing. We're not gurus, we're just guys who do stuff, and hopefully you will too, and we'd love to do stuff with you. So we'll chat amongst ourselves after we're done, and then, as you said, follow up. I love coffee. Anybody wants to know what I know about anything? Caffeinate me, and then try to get me to shut up, and we can talk about it. So that's me, in a nutshell.
Let's go with Sloan.
Hi, my name is Sloan. I'm a Reston realtor, and I do a little bit of buy and hold investing in Reston.
Cool.
That's the short version.
Short version. Thanks, Sloan. Appreciate
Easy.
it. Go ahead, sir.
Ken, I'm actually here with my wife, Mindy, who's getting into the real estate investment. So I'm giving support and learn myself.
Sweet.
And I'm Mindy Graff, and I, like my husband said, I'm just starting in real estate investment, and I've taken some classes online. I've joined a women's network out there, and I'm really hoping to dig in and get going.
Awesome. Cool. Welcome.
Evening, everybody. I'm John Alatesta. I've been coming to Grid before it was Grid for about 8 years now. Been investing for about 15 years. Also run PMI Fairfax, the property management business for Northern Virginia. Great group of guys, good knowledge, good. Come every month that you can come. Don't caffeinate Mark too much. It will get a little long, but it's okay. It is like drinking from a fire hose, but it's a good source of knowledge. But yeah, no, here to help in any way. Feel free to ask me any questions, and happy meeting everybody.
Cool.
Hi everybody, my name is Edwin. I'm also into I want to get into the real estate investment. I've been coming to the meetings, I've been flying 3 times by now, so I'm happy to be here and going to meet some of you as well.
Great. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Alba. I'm a real estate investor. I focus on medium-sized multifamily apartments in North Carolina, Pennsylvania. I think the market is going to turn really great despite of inflation and all the scary things going on, and I'm looking to build a new source of a new pipeline of deals.
Awesome. Welcome.
Jim Hellman, I'm with National Settlement Services right here in Annandale, Virginia. 25 years in the real estate game, predominantly as a mortgage broker on the residential commercial side. I switched teams. I went over to the title business. I'm a licensed title agent and notary. We close in Virginia and Maryland if you need an investor-friendly title company.
Awesome. Welcome.
I'm Bill Horan. I'm with Realty Exchange Corporation. I'm a qualified intermediary for 1031 exchange. So if somebody needs to do a trade, I'm the middleman for doing that.
I just got to tell you guys, he is prolific in this area when it comes to 1031s. Like
He's the guy.
he's the guy, right? He's the guy. He's also the guy that probably could give us a lot of collective intelligence about what's happening in the market. I mean, the fact that you're here means that you're breathing a little bit, because last year you couldn't breathe, right? I mean, you were doing 200 to 300, I think 1031s a month, right? So has it dropped off considerably? Okay, it's dropped off. We were just saying though, we feel the market's very active right now, but you're probably the best gauge for us. So, no, I don't know. Well, it's good to have you here. Thank you. Sure. Go ahead.
Okay. My name is Brianna. I have been doing real estate stuff for the past 2 years. By daytime, I'm a cybersecurity engineer, so I do part-time wholesaling, part-time private money brokering and hard money brokering, and I own a couple rental properties, so I'm just trying to build a portfolio.
Awesome. Welcome. Go ahead.
Hello, I'm Steve Kim. I'm a photographer and a videographer for real estate. You must need me.
Yes.
But I'm a very, very, very new investor, so I just started, and this is my first time
Okay.
this year. So yeah, I'm Steve.
Welcome. Yeah.
Hi guys, my name is Jordan. I'm an agent with Keller Williams, and I'm also a full-time wholesaler. And I have my first deal under contract, just one text message away from
He was showing me pictures. It's a doozy. It's a fire damaged house.
Yes.
Right.
It's a townhouse. All full fire. Nobody was hurt, thankfully.
Yeah.
But I was getting this. I got this from another investor who got it for dirt cheap, and my goal is to flip it to. I already have a buyer lined up, so we have the price locked in. So one text message away from that.
Okay. Where is it located? Somebody asked.
It's in Dumfries.
Dumfries. Okay. There you go. Cool.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Bond. I am a real estate investor in Warren County, so I had a little bit of a drive to get here.
Thank you for coming, by the way.
You go where the networking and the people are. So I've driven to Fredericksburg, Winchester, Martinsburg. Networking is this business, you know.
Yeah.
I have commercial and residential real estate. I'm in the middle of a build out for one of our commercial locations, and I'm in the middle of wholesaling a deal. I have it under contract. I am looking to flip my next property, do all kinds of real estate things, but Warren County is where I live and where I'm focusing on the most. My wholesale deal is a property in Springfield, and I'm wholesaling wholesaling it to a real estate investor that I met at one of these meetings. So even if you don't live where you're networking, it's still good to know people, spread out, so.
We'd say the power is in all the relationships that you meet, right? It's one of the big things we talk about. You need to be Coleman. Coleman's been flipping properties in Winchester and lives out in that area.
Okay.
Mark and I have been buying properties in Warren County, so we definitely should talk.
One of the reasons
Right.
why I came out here.
Yeah, awesome. I love it
We'll
out
talk
there.
afterwards.
Cool, very cool.
I'm Ian. During the day, I work mostly in the traditional financial markets, stocks, bonds, those kind of things. But a friend of mine told me about this group to come out here. I've been a landlord, done a few flips. My wife's in construction, so really just looking to meet folks to scale up leverage and also find new deals. So.
Great. Well, welcome. Have you watched the Bernie Madoff thing on Netflix?
I have not. My wife has no interest in that, so maybe some late night.
Oh man, I binged it.
but
It's
not
crazy.
interest in her.
It's crazy. Okay. Go ahead.
My name is Mike. I work with Rob at CAZA. I'm an agent, investor, advisor. I work with investors. On the investment side, I like to buy and hold, short, medium, long term. And then on the agent side, I primarily work with investors, help them pick up properties, things like that.
There's a lot of house hacking.
I do a lot of house hacks, yeah.
Yeah.
Are you a grid certified agent advisor?
You know it.
Awesome. Very cool.
My name is Ali Davar. I work at the CAZA Group with all of these guys. Also with Mike, we specialize in helping investors, builders, developers, really help them maximize like what they make and give them advice, and also really create, like, be an agent, investor-friendly agent. They can be creative, they can have solutions. And right now, if anybody's interested, we got 2 buildings coming up in DC that we're selling. So we do all kinds of difficult things. We solve difficult problems. That's our job.
Yeah. We did a $1.3 million lease option in December, right?
Yeah.
We've got.
Yeah, that was we had a property that is a single family home in Arlington, and value was definitely there at 1.3, but we just couldn't sell it, even though, market wasn't that bad yet. And we did a lease option where we got it sold. We agreed on a price. The person who bought it put a good amount, like $200,000 that they put down. They gave a really good amount as a non-refundable EMD, and you solved that problem. And they were really happy.
Yeah. I'm not.
I'm Mike Casey, 20-year real estate investor. No day job anymore, so I think my official title is networker. I'm trying to network as much as possible. I'd love to connect with you guys. I wrote a book called Cash Flow Breakfast Club. I'm in the middle of writing my 2nd book, so warning, if you tell me a story, it may actually go into my next book. I'm trying to find creative real estate investing stories outside of my own.
And you're doing some big projects.
I am a syndicator. I am working to get, I'm through zoning purgatory at the moment, a $3 billion development project off the ground in Loudoun County. It should be a destination city, and I'm a accredited investor, syndicator for that.
That's awesome.
Loudoun County, right next door.
Yeah, right next door. Very cool. Go ahead, sir.
I'm Brian Zabikari. I still have a daytime job, like 3 of you guys. But getting into multifamily investing, primarily focusing on Tennessee and northern Alabama market.
Very cool. Awesome. I have connections in Tennessee if you need, by the way. Okay. Go ahead.
All right. Good evening. My name is Brandon Furter. I'm with Homebrew Investment Group. My 2 partners here. I'll let them introduce themselves. But we are new upcoming investment group in this area, focusing on wholesaling, buy and hold, and arbitrage, as well as possibly going into multifamily in the near future. Currently working potentially our first deal in Arlington, but have been focusing on Northern Virginia, a little bit of Pennsylvania, a little bit of Southern Virginia as well.
Right.
I'll go next. I'm pretty short, so hey, how's it going? Jorge Herrera, also with Homebrew. This is my first time here. Really excited to learn and network. By day, I'm a human capital consultant, and then by day and night, I am in investment real estate. So excited to be here and learn.
Great.
Hello everybody, my name is Coleman Bales. By day, I'm a residential mortgage lender through Atlantic Coast Mortgage. Do a lot of mortgages for the CAZA Group and the other Keller Williams agents in the office here. I've also been a real estate investor for about 2 years now. Been a part of a few different rental deals, a couple different flip deals, and most recently I've become a part of Rob and Mark's new simply funded project. So we're doing some hard money lending, and we'd love to talk to any and everybody here about potentially funding some deals.
Yeah. There you go. We're excited about that.
I'm liking all this superhero language too. By day,
By day,
I do this. In the dark of night, I do weird shit in houses. Brings more of that energy. Who's up? Yeah.
Who's up next?
Hi.
Willie Fayfrock. I'm brand new to the whole investing thing, so I was pointed in this direction, and we're just looking for some houses to, just investment houses to kind of stack up a portfolio.
Awesome. You're not related to Tim Fitterfrock, are you?
I'm sure. There's not too many of us.
I know.
So I'm sure we're all related somewhere.
Cool.
It's not one of the names you forget.
You don't forget
Once you
that
hear it,
name.
It's stuck.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Let me know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
Hi everybody, I'm Janae. I'm an agent on the CAZA team. I work primarily in DC with a lot of investors, hard money lenders that are trying to sell property.
Janae's been selling our difficult condo development deals in the district, so she's learning a lot, right? So she says she likes working on the investment side.
I do.
Yeah. Buki.
Buki, also with the CAZA Group. I'm a realtor by day. At night I do other things. No, so I focus on residential real estate, helping my clients build wealth through real estate, and also here to meet and connect with people so I can help me build wealth through real estate.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. That's cool. Tim.
My name's Tim. I'll continue with the theme here. By day, real estate agent. By night, business broker. A good friend of mine, Lydia here. And I have to say, this group is great, as you guys know. It is in the networking, and by night, working on a business sale was all happened through the networking, and so many great things came out of that. And it was just opening your mouth and networking.
Awesome. Lydia.
My name is Lydia Hagan. I'm a business owner, maybe soon to be not. And then I've always been interested in real estate, but I've never had the opportunity to kind of see where I fit in. And I'm also very interested in the investor side as well.
Great. Awesome.
I'm Chase. I'm an agent with the Carrie Scholl team. I'm also tasked with selling really difficult properties. No, but I'm also getting into the investment side of things, and I have a lot of clients that are investors now. So, yeah, I'm excited to learn from all of you.
Awesome. Welcome.
Hey everyone, my name is Carlos Hernandez. I'm part of the Homebrew Investor Group. I'm a buy and hold investor here in the area, and my day job is a cybersecurity engineer as well. Looking to build up a portfolio or just increase my portfolio here in Northern Virginia. So.
You know, we get a lot of engineers in this room. It's pretty cool because you guys understand the power of compounding and investments. It's cool.
That's why he's on our team.
That's right. Go ahead, you did.
Hi everyone, I'm Norma. So I'm a pharmacist by profession, but I want to learn about real estate and build a portfolio. That's my goal.
Great. Welcome. Who do we miss? Okay, in the back. Go ahead. You guys.
Hi, my name is Tiffany. I'm an agent at KW Kyson. I've been an agent for almost 21 years. I was a referral for the last 8, so I'm coming back full time. I'm licensed DC, Virginia, and Maryland, and I met Rob at a mastermind in December. So I thought I would come and join and see what I can learn from you guys. I have a lot of foreign investors, and then of course building my own portfolio. I own 3 businesses in Old Town Alexandria, and I'm trying to get out of the 2, so they're under contract. It's hair salon and spa, and
There we go. Look, connection right there. Salon, right here. She's a buyer. She's a seller. No. That's cool.
We'll take another offer.
We'll take another offer. We've got 2.
Yeah.
11, 10, 10, not 20. I saw him outside.
Will you check to see if there's anybody downstairs? Just in case. Do you have the key?
I have a key.
Okay, you got it. Yeah, I'm just worried that there might be people trying to come up the elevator. Thank you, Scott.
I have preschool daycare, which is another great business. So I have a lot of my, parents.
You sound like it's a great business.
So it's a great business.
No, he's just he's.
Oh, okay. So I have a lot of parents that are interested, to learn more, and they're always moving and building their portfolio as they have more kids. So I got to learn more to help them.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You're welcome. Go ahead.
My name is Shobana. I guess I have a similar background. I've been in IT for over 20 years. Right now I have two companies. One is my IT company focusing on mergers and acquisitions, cybersecurity, and cloud transformation and strategy. And the second one is that I'm a real estate agent. I've been in residential for a while, but I'm trying to get into the commercial.
Great. Welcome.
Thank you.
My name is Abdul. I'm a physical therapist by training. I have a small staffing healthcare agency. And other than my home, I don't have any experience in. I'm here to learn about real estate.
Great. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Go ahead, sir.
As everybody knows, Lamont Keys, real estate agent, investor and wholesaler. I'm currently in Maryland, looking to cross the leverage here in Virginia, so please say hello.
You crossed the bridge, man. Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it.
We appreciate that. That's awesome. Anybody else? We good? Okay.
Well, I made a pitch for Skylar, who left the room, to go check to see if there's any stragglers in the elevator. She's on my team over on the construction side. Does sales and estimating for pre-sale renovations. So if anyone here is an agent, knows anyone that has any property that needs to get fixed up to minimize the investment, to maximize the out sale, that's the thing that she can help with. So check in with the nice, pleasant woman in the beanie hat when she gets back up.
Yeah.
If you want to chat about that. So that killed a good half an hour.
I know, that was long. But you know what? I think it's valuable because there's people here that can meet each other now. Right, it's an important piece.
Not a waste of time at all. Hopefully you all heard that there's people in here doing deals and selling businesses and need money and getting started and wanting partners and wanting to buy. Literally everything you need
We
to
got
make
a
a ton
$3
of money
billion project going on over here or something.
is in this room, right? Just talk to other people in the place and just don't be surprised if you make a lot of money and just give us credit later. Bring us, cut us in for something.
Yeah.
So that's why we do.
What are we talking about tonight?
We're talking about wholesale.
Okay. Why are we talking about wholesale?
Because they're about to make it illegal, so we got to hurry up and get it all done now. Everyone knows it's highly illegal, right?
No.
No, it's
No.
not illegal.
No.
What is it?
Who wants to take a stab at what wholesaling is? We'll make this a little interactive.
Who claims to be a wholesaler?
Who's a wholesaler in here? Jordan, what's wholesale?
What's wholesale?
Well, I'm not an expert.
Okay.
But wholesaling is you're finding an owner of a distressed property or in a distressed situation, and you are wanting to get their house you want to buy their house from them, you want to buy the title of their house under contract, then reassign those rights to an end buyer for a fee. And the difference between what you buy and what you sell it for is what you take home. It could be $5,000, $10,000, $20,000, there's no limit to it.
So wholesaling, you're right, 100%. There's one little nuance. You said the title, and it's really just controlling real estate with a piece of paper in a purchase contract, right? And then what you do is you sell that contract, just like Jordan said, to another investor who wants to renovate the property. So the wholesaler is putting it under contract, and typically they're a good marketer. Wholesalers have to learn the game of marketing. And by the way, if you guys don't know this, you're in the game of marketing when it comes to real estate investing, right? That's what every business is. Every business is about sales and marketing. But you really learn the game as a wholesaler because you're controlling real estate with a piece of paper, purchase contract, then you're selling that piece of paper to a rehabber like Mark Beckett, and you're making the spread between what you have it under contract for and what he's willing to buy it for. And there's a formula typically to it.
Yeah, and actually we can run through maybe how some of the math might work. But to kind of bring it all back to what people might be familiar with, I think most people are familiar with the normal agent sale process. You hire someone and pay them, I guess through a commission, to list a property for you, go out and find a buyer, bring the two parties together. That's what you get paid your commission for, right? Everyone maybe understands theoretically the process of rehabbing, flipping, call it whatever you want. You buy the thing, you put some amount of money into it, hopefully you sell it for more than you have into it. But you got to buy it, you got to hold it, you got to find somebody else to sell it. Wholesaling is, as Jordan was saying, that act of selling just your rights to buy some other piece of property, right? And so what makes it legal, and I'm not sure why anyone thinks it's not, but in this country, We get to sell rights. Rights are a thing. Rights have value, and rights are a controllable asset. So, by having a property under contract to purchase, even though you may have no intent to actually buy it, you having it under contract to purchase does give you sellable rights that you can transfer to someone else. All we're talking about is transferring those rights to someone else for a fee. And the fee then is usually the difference between what you've agreed to buy it for and seller has agreed to sell it for. Seller, person A, your person B, and then person C is the end buyer who actually takes title to the property, goes to the closing, does all the regular stuff. Who knows what they're doing with it? We don't care. Whatever they're willing to pay for it, minus whatever person A is willing to sell it for, is the difference that you should theoretically be able to make as your fee, as your wholesale fee, for bringing this deal that you got from this seller over here to this buyer over here.
A couple of things you need to know about that. Your contract needs to be assignable, right? It has to have the ability to be assigned. The Virginia contract or the DC contract, Maryland contract, doesn't allow you to assign it unless you write into the contract that you have the right to assign it, right? And so you can, and by the way, most purchase contracts that investors have might only be 1 to 2 pages long. How long is the Maryland contract, Maryland people? Right? 52 pages. I mean, it's a lot of pages, right? It's a lot of pages. And typically that's because it's protecting a lot of brokerage, right? It's defining a lot of rules around it. But an investment contract just has to be 1 page, really. And then there's the purchase contract, which is assignable. And then there's an assignment contract. So there's typically 2 documents that are involved in this process. And the second document's the assignment contract, and it just says, hey, you agree to buy the rights to my contract, and you have to settle on this day, and this is how much you're, putting your money into it. Like we're gonna make them put skin in the game, and if they don't settle on it, I get to take that money, right? Because I need to kind of protect myself in that process. Because people are always worried about, like, what if your end buyer doesn't buy it? Like, that's a big fear. Well, they've put down typically pretty sizable non-refundable deposit that I have the ability to take, and then I can work out a deal with my end buyer and maybe extend the time or explain to them what's happened, right? And so another thing that people need to know is that your end buyer typically has to buy cash, right? That's an important thing when it comes to wholesaling. No? Yes? Your question?
They just have to buy the property. I think maybe most investors are cash buyers, but I guess define what you mean by cash buyer.
So Coleman's company, right, will not allow
his day job as a mortgage lender. Okay, with a traditional bank.
With a traditional bank will not allow that to happen, right? They won't allow the assignment to happen.
Sound right, Coleman? If someone came to you and said, hey, I'm an investor and I'm buying this property through an assignment from another investor and I would like to get a loan for it, your traditional options probably would not apply?
As far as just getting the loan to purchase it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't run into that. Honestly, I would think it would not be a problem, but
it's a problem, right? Now, a lot of times people go, well, I'm not a cash buyer. Well, yes, there are private lenders out here that will lend you the money to buy that asset, right? So it doesn't have to be your cash. It could be somebody else's cash, right?
Yeah, and I like to say what transfers at the table when you go to closing is always cash. It's just a matter of whose cash it is, right? So I think everybody's a cash buyer when you get to the closing table. I think what you're saying, though, is you're not likely to make deals like this happen with a traditional loan from a traditional bank where you go in and say, I'm Joe, happy prospective homeowner, and here's my W-2s and tax records. Look how good I am. Look how pretty this house is. Please give me a 30-year loan to buy it.
There's 3 reasons why, okay? There's probably more. But reason number 1 is speed. This game is typically done very quickly, right? So Jordan puts that property under contract, and he might have written the contract in such a way where it needs to be settled on in the next 10 days or 12 days or 13 days. And a traditional lender, more than likely, isn't going to get it done that fast. Although they could, but the reason number two is that there's an underwriting guideline that potentially prevents them from being able to do that, right? The third reason is because how banged up is that house? It's bad, right? It's a fire trap. And so a traditional lender is not going to lend on this distressed asset. And so,
Probably.
no, they're definitely not lending on that asset. I saw the pictures,
I have a
right?
quick question. So as the middleman, I guess the wholesaler, you need to put any money, because you also
Sure.
mentioned deposit.
Yeah.
When you initiate that process, and then how do you go about finding these deals?
That's a great question. Two great questions, right? So the first one is you want to put down the least amount that you possibly can. It's whatever you decide to negotiate. Mark and I talk about consideration. There's this active consideration. But we just did one where we put down $100 non-refundable, type of deposit, $100 deposit on it, right? But then we collected a $5,000 non-refundable deposit. So we minimize our risk here, and we made it difficult for that other person to walk away. So it comes down to the negotiation. Do you have any comments on that?
I'd say that's right. I've put properties under contract for $5 that nobody actually ever got. In fact, we kind of laugh about it. Well, they get it at the end. I just don't actually half the time post it up front. You have $5. The point is, Mr. or Mrs. Seller, that this house is going to be sold relatively quickly for cash as is, and your problem goes away. It's really not about an EMD that you're looking to try to keep somebody in the deal. I'm not going to be wasting more than 72 hours of your time. If you don't see things happening in the next 24 hours, people calling to follow up and ask you to sign things and get information about the title and find out when closing is going to happen, then you'll know I'm not going to be doing what it was I said I was going to do. But that's not going to happen. You're going to realize pretty quickly we do what we say we're going to do, and this will happen. That's more explanation than you ever really have to give.
But it could be $1,000, it could be $5,000, whatever you decide to negotiate with the other party. See, people always like the idea of this concept of wholesaling because it is a powerful concept. You can essentially get into real estate with no money. You can make money, right, with no money out of your own pocket or very little money out of your own pocket. But what they don't really understand and what nobody really teaches you is that this is a game about, at this stage, once you get at that kitchen table, about developing rapport and developing relationship and getting people to trust you. Why would they trust you, right? And that's important because you could spend a lot of money marketing. You could spend a lot of money marketing and then get to the kitchen table and just completely botch it because you did not understand how to build a relationship. Coleman, you had something.
I was going to say, I have bought a home from a wholesaler before with a conventional loan. It's just that the property was in pretty much turnkey state, believe it or not. Not all of them are that way.
Right.
And, I can do conventional loans pretty quickly, but like you said, it's you can't finance a renovation into that.
How long did it take?
Mine actually, we did a 30-day close on mine, believe it or not.
30 day?
Yeah.
And I've had purchases that took 30 days to close just because that's what the seller wanted. They weren't ready to close in 30 days. So that's why I would say it's theoretically possible. But the reason that it's good to talk about is because if you're out there trying to get into wholesaling, whatever that means, as a buyer or a seller, if you are looking to buy a deal from someone who says, I'm going to wholesale you this deal, and it's a house that's all banged up and the basement's flooded, there's a hole in the roof, and it's going to need a ton of work, don't think that you're likely going to walk into the corner bank and say, hey, guy that gave me a mortgage for the house that I'm living in, please give me another one to buy this terrible mold-infested house that I need to throw more money into and hopefully sell it for more than I've got into it. The answer will probably be, well, that's not really our business, thank you, from most of the big guys. But there are plenty of other people whose business that is. Come back in a few months, we'll introduce you to a bunch of them and tell you how it works. So as a seller, think that. As the wholesaler, if I have my property under contract and I want to sell it to Rob, and Rob says, cool, I'm definitely your buyer. I'm going to buy that thing all day long. I got my loan. I'm already pre-qualified at Bank of the Nation. maybe say, well, let's double check on that first. Do you know what shape this house is in? Does this lender know what shape this house is in? What does pre-qualified mean? Good old-fashioned traditional lending on properties like what we typically buy is usually harder to get. Plenty of other places to get it. But I just want to make that distinction.
I'm wondering if, depending on the bank, the underwriting guidelines of that bank, potentially. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so wouldn't those rules not apply for like creative financing options like Sub-2 and seller financing?
Completely different.
Yeah.
Right?
Different.
In fact, next month, we're talking about all creative and all seller Sub-2 stuff. We just got done completing our third Sub-2. So we're getting more and more experience. And by the way, that is a very, very, that strategy, you're going to see more and more people use that strategy into this market. Why do you think? Why is Sub-2 such a big strategy right now?
Lower interest rate.
The low interest rates.
In the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Yeah. 2.5, 3%.
Yeah, because the asset itself is no longer, or the property itself is no longer the only asset that's there. That loan is an asset.
So come back for that discussion, because that's another a long discussion too, as is the discussion about where we find these deals and how those conversations come up. But it is a very good question, and the answer is the same for how do I give somebody $5 to put a deposit on their house, and how do I find these deals? It's the same answer. The preview is these are motivated sellers. And a motivated seller is not concerned about the deposit that you're putting down in a house that you're going to buy in the next week or two. And a motivated seller is the person that we want to talk to that has a problem that we can solve through purchasing real estate.
Yeah, but his question was, how do you find them?
Right, but
right?
You answered by saying, you need to create that trust. I think you answered the question.
Well, and we teach this concept in more detail, but I'll give you, there's only 3 ways to really find deals, right? I talk about this all the time, right? There's prospecting, there's networking, right? You heard, what was your name again? Jennifer, talk about that. And there's marketing. And typically what we do is we teach people that prospecting and networking is your lowest cost. Like in the beginning, that's probably what you should be doing, is prospecting and networking. And then once you make some money, you start spending some money on marketing. Now, you don't have to spend a ton of money on marketing. Like, who's ever heard of the concept of driving for dollars, right? So, but believe it or not, that works really, really well. Driving for dollars works. But where the wheels fall off the bus for most people is that they cannot be consistent with a system. Systems make the ordinary extraordinary. So if you found 100 houses that all required some kind of level of work, and you wrote them down on a sheet of paper, and then you transferred that into a CRM, and that CRM then had triggers that would send out postcards on a monthly basis where you didn't have to think about it, then you've created a system. And eventually somebody out of those 100 houses would raise their hand and say, yeah, I'm interested in selling. But that process, for whatever reason, I find people have an incredibly difficult time implementing, right? Who's ever gone to a networking event, met somebody, right, exchanged their contact information, and then never business cards aren't a thing anymore, right? But business cards were a thing back in the day. I'd go to networking events, I'd collect these business cards, and I had a hard time getting these business cards into my CRM, but I knew I had to do it. And so I find that people go to networking events, they meet people, but then never put them into a database. So you got to figure out a way to meet people, put them into a database, and then put them into your marketing web. And that's all this is. This game is about a marketing game, which means that you need to collect relationships and people and put them into a database, and then you market to them forever with the message that you want them to hear, right? If you say, I'm a wholesaler, that's the wrong message. If you say, I'm a wholesaler in Warren County, that's a better message. Why?
Specific.
It's specific. But what happens is everybody's always worried about what they are going to lose. So they want to be a generalist. They're worried about, like I want to tell people I'm an investor. Well, where do you invest? Everywhere. Well, what that does is that you'll never come to their mind. But if you say I invest in Warren County, that's my area of specialization. One day, a Warren County deal is going to come across your desk, and you go, oh, I know who to call, right? And so the more specific you are, the better. That's to create a big life. You need to go small, and you got to go niche, right? The problem with most investors when they get into marketing is that they want to market everywhere, and your budget cannot go everywhere. So your budget's got to go really tight, really small, right? And say, okay, I'm going to dominate these 2,000 houses. I'm going to dominate like these absentee owners, deep equity properties in this area, right? So that's really important, right? In order to play this game effectively, you guys also need access to the best data out there. So you need access to the MLS or something like PropStream to find out what values are. You can't be using values on Zillow and Redfin to determine pricing, right? The data is old, it's stale, it's bad. You need to get access to some of that data, which is why, by the way, a lot of real estate investors have their license because they were like, well, I need access to the MLS and I don't want to rely on an agent. I got to wait for the agent to go show me the property. Instead, they get their license so that they can go look at the property when it comes up, right? That's how I started, right? Now, I run a large multiple real estate teams, but I started because I didn't want the friction, right? I wanted to be able to go when I wanted to go, right? So you might want to consider that. You might want to consider getting your license in order to get quick access to data and houses. This game is built on speed, right?
Or partner with someone that does.
Or partner with somebody that does, right? He doesn't have his license, right?
So why don't we run through those numbers real quick, because you mentioned that before, just how an investor might look at a deal and how a wholesaler might find a spread in between there. So to keep the math easy, let's say that there's a house out there that will be worth, after renovation, $100,000. And that in its current condition, it's going to take $10,000 to get it to the $100,000 level, right? So what would an investor typically want to pay for that house?
Well, they would take, at $100,000, you'd probably say 65% ARV. So you'd start at let's just say $6,000. At 60,000.
Yeah.
And then you subtract out the 10.
Okay.
Brings you to 50.
50. So
and that would be the strike acquisition price.
The investor rehabber purchase price
would buy it for 50.
Would buy it for 50. Everybody understand what the math is there? That 40% difference between 60 and 60,000 and 100,000 is the rehabber spread, not including renovation, but that pays for the cost of acquisition, the cost of sale, the cost of holding it, the cost of your money, and of course your profit, right? From that number, you subtract the cost of actual sticks and bricks renovation, then that's what I want to pay for it. So I want to buy 50. I want to put 10,000 into it, be into it for 60. If I have to borrow money and I got cost to buy it, and I got cost to sell it, I'll probably be into it for 75 or 80. And if I sell it for 100, then I'll make 20. I would do that deal all day long. Anybody has that house for $100,000, please let me know. Well, for $50,000 that I can sell for 100, please let me know. All right, so I'll buy it for 50. Then, if you as a wholesaler then come across that same seller before I meet them, what are you trying to do? How do you make money?
I know that Mark will buy it from me for 50 because the math is the math across, it's the same for everybody.
Roughly.
Right, roughly. So I need to get it below 50. So maybe I get it for 45. And I know that I can now make the $5,000 spread or 40. So this is a game of negotiation at this point. You're negotiating, right?
So your job then as a wholesaler is to know really just one thing, which is what would another investor pay for this? And if you know what another investor would pay for this, then any amount you can get it under contract for below that amount, is how much you should be able to assign your rights for. Does that make sense? If I'll pay 50 and he can get it for 49, then he should have $1,000 in there, because when he calls me up and says, hey, here's the address, it's 50 grand, what do you think? I say, yeah, I'll take it. He assigns, the spread is there. We can talk about how you actually get that money
You
in
know,
a second.
the
but that's
interesting
on
thing
that.
is the last couple of years, the market has bailed a lot of investors out, right? Because you put something under contract today with one number, and then like 3 months later, it's worth something significantly more, right? So in this market, so by the way, a lot of investors over the last, as the market has started to correct over the last 3, 4 months, 5 months, you've seen investors get hurt. There's been investors that have gotten hurt in the last 3 or 4 months. As the market starts stabilizing out and you start understanding like what's going on, people start, sellers are getting more realistic. You're seeing that in the marketplace. You're seeing price reductions. Buyers are more aware about what they need to buy for another contract. They're a little bit more nervous or a little bit more scared. It's always this period of time when things are in flux that's kind of dangerous sometimes for investors, right? You put one under contract,
I've purchased a deal from a wholesaler that I am now very nervous about as it finishes completion. Them's the breaks. Markets shift. It doesn't always work. You don't always make Lambo money doing this. So keep that in mind for what it's worth. But that is the reason that wholesaling is so good. Because the guy I bought it from has already cashed his $50,000 check. He's already put the down payment on the Lambo, spent nothing to acquire the lead, spent nothing on the actual property, didn't have to spend very much on the paperwork, because paperwork's not terribly complicated. You make your money and bounce. And then it's everybody else does their thing.
It's one of the benefits. It's why people want to wholesale. And in fact, many times what you will see is you'll see wholesalers go to rehabbing, and they think that that's where they should go. They feel like that's the growth, the next step for them. And then you see them find out that that's a hard business to scale. And then they regress back to wholesaling many times. Or they'll do a combination of the two, right? They'll maybe for every 4 that they buy, they'll wholesale 3, rehab 1, right?
So Mark, quick question, go back to you. So how much experience do you need to have to be able to, sort of quickly assess the value of the property that, is damaged and you want to get it?
Surprise, surprise, we have a month for that. So there's a time we talked all about the spreadsheet that I use to estimate renovations on a cost per square foot basis to say, plug in this, spits out that, that's how much I want to pay for this. So the short answer is you have some formula for determining here's what it's worth, here's what it should cost to renovate, that means I should pay this for it. The longer answer is you have to learn that, right? Back to Rob's point about being specific about a market, you are going to be so much better able to learn about like 20190 in Reston than you will about all of Fairfax, than you will about all of Northern Virginia, than you will about all of DC Metro, than you will about all of the Eastern Seaboard. So the more granular you get on the market you choose to go after, I think the better off you'll be in being able to analyze your opportunity. Your opportunity doesn't have to just be geographic, though. Your thing can just be 20 to 30 unit apartment buildings, and maybe those are in another state somewhere, but I'm going to know everything there is to know about how to assess a 20 to 30 unit multi-unit building in Dayton, Ohio, or wherever it is I'm choosing to invest. Your backyard is great. If you're going to invest anywhere, invest in the place that you know the most, but that's fine. You can invest anywhere you want, but I would suggest that it be some kind of well-defined market or thing or type of property or type of seller or something that you can get really, really good at understanding the values of. Right?
We had a question in the back.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
Ladies first. Sorry.
I was just wondering if it's always a dilapidated home that would be the client that would be you would look at to be a wholesaler, or could it also sometimes be a distressed buyer that you don't see that the home is visually dilapidated or distressed?
A distress, yeah. So sometimes Mark always talks about it's either the physical asset is in distress, or sometimes there's emotional distress, and sometimes it's a combination. More than likely, it's a combination of the two. So divorce is one, right? Where I remember one of my early transactions, the gentleman just was like, I don't want to go back in that house. There's so much mental pain and anguish. I want this house to just be gone. And he was willing to sell it at a discount, right? I sold the business one time for $1. $1. We ran this business for 5 years. My wife and I ran this business for 5 years. We were emotionally distressed. Like, we just didn't want to deal with it anymore. And the people that were running it for us, we sold it to them for $1, right? And so that just happens, right? You will find people in their life where they're just like, you know what? I just want to be done with it.
And here's another example. We haven't seen this in a hot minute, but at the bottom of the last down cycle, if I remember, there were tons of short sales and foreclosures out there. We bought a few of those that were not spotless, but they needed very little work for very good prices to just fix them up a little, paint, sometimes nothing, and then resell a short time later. So no, they don't always have to be physically in distress. There just needs to be something motivating. The motivating factor could be it's a bank looking to offload the thing and they just want a good, clean offer. The motivating factor could be it's a bank that's having to negotiate a short sale with someone who's trying to get out for it for less than what they actually owe on it. And again, they've just made the decision today that they're looking to get out of it. We haven't seen a lot of that in a while, so you tend to think, well, the only deal I'm getting is the one on a house that's in terrible condition and the seller's trying to run away from it. But it's not just physical condition. There's motivation, some motivation somewhere, and motivation doesn't come from the house. Motivation comes from the seller, from the person. So what things motivate people? Preview for that discussion, by the way. Think about what things motivate people. Those are the markets I'm looking for. Those are the people I want to be in conversations with.
Yeah, and the truth is, our job is to solve problems for those people, right? Sometimes there's, anybody ever watch Hoarders, right? Like there is mental illness that happens, and people get trapped in their house, and they don't know how to get unstuck from a situation, and they are embarrassed to bring a real estate agent in because, you know, all they see is like selling pretty houses, right? And so it takes a therapist type of personality. Many times I remember being like, as an investor, I'm like a therapist, and I'm uncovering how I can help this person move forward in their life. And sometimes it has to do with, well, let's, you know, I find that many times it's like, what do I do with my stuff? That seems to be like a really big one. Where do I put it, right? So it's like helping people move things into storage, bringing movers in, helping pack. Like we've done it all, right? Like we've told people just leave what you want to leave and take what you want to take, and they'll take like a suitcase and leave a house full of stuff, like 20 years worth of stuff, right? And you're like, why would somebody do that? Right? It just is life, right? Life. And so we help solve those problems.
Stuff happens. Don't want to forget your question. Yes.
Yeah, I apologize if I'm jumping the gun here. I don't know if you guys will reach this point, but just going back a few minutes to where you guys were talking about the formula, talking about percent ARV. Rob, I heard you say like 60 to 65% ARV, and I know there's different ranges. Sometimes it can range all the way up to 85% of the ARV.
The higher you go up in price, right, the higher that number is going to be. Meaning, like, listen, if it's $1 million ARV, you're not going to start at $600,000, right?
Maybe.
I mean,
what's the highest wholesale fee you've ever seen?
$500,000.
$500,000.
By a guy in this room.
Correct, but not here right now. I don't know if it bounced to Florida, but good for him. He made $500,000 on deal.
Yeah, but that was a development deal. So.
Yes, it was. But the point is that the percentage will vary by the kind of deal, how aggressive that particular investor. My number may be 70, somebody else's might be 80. I don't see how it works at 95 or more, because you've got 5% worth of closing cost grind, and that leaves nothing. But yeah, the
Good
percentage
point.
will be whatever your buyer wants to pay and is willing to pay.
Yeah, and my second part to that question too, I mean, like that specific formula works really well for fix and flippers, right?
Mhm.
Because you're finding quote unquote a cash buyer, their exit strategy is fix and flipper, but as we know in wholesaling, there's also different strategies you can be doing, as well as like a buy and hold investor who you can wholesale it to, where they're focusing on NOI, their cap rate, and as well as cash on cash return.
Yep.
My question is on the dispo side for like exit strategies, and you guys are looking at it. Yes, fix and flipper is one of them. But have you guys seen any success with wholesaling to like new construction builders, and how you guys would potentially go about doing that? And I can ask this outside the group too. But.
Yeah, and that's how that guy made $500,000. He sold to a developer when no one else had yet found this property and this seller to realize that it had that much development opportunity in it. That's obviously, maybe not surprisingly, in a city where you have more value add opportunity, right? But yeah, that's your other job as a wholesaler / investor, is trying to uncover opportunity and upside. As a wholesaler, I don't care what you do with it, but if I can find a property that has higher upside, now I know who I want to try to sell it to, right? So yeah, your corner market could be a better self-storage location. Your average row house could make a better 4-unit condo conversion. So yeah, part of your job is trying to uncover higher value add opportunity to sell to your end buyer.
Yeah, it's interesting because two people can look at a piece of property, and one has knowledge of what they could actually do with that piece of property, and the other one doesn't have knowledge of what they can do. So it's worth more to the person that's like, oh, I can convert this into an event space, where somebody else might just see it as like agricultural land. It's like, no, wait a second. It has the zoning to be able to create a wedding event space, and so it's worth more to that person, right? Same thing on the development stuff. And so, so the way you solve for that, by the way, is you build a really, really big list on the dispo side. The bigger the list, and you just send it out to everybody, and then people will evaluate it based on how they see it. There's money that comes over from China that they look at real estate very differently than we do here. I mean, everything, they're like, you guys are selling this stuff cheap. And so they're willing to buy it for more, right? Because they value it differently in their mind. So
back to specialization again too, because that's an opportunity then to specialize in a thing. Well, if I know there are a lot of row houses being converted in this part of the city, maybe that's where I should go door knocking, right? And then try to uncover that person willing to sell the row house at 3 that I know a developer would happily pay 6 because they can convert it into a $1.9 million condo project.
Yeah,
right?
I thought of something. Have you guys seen? And you've probably seen this, right? People in California, they have all this money, and you start seeing them buy in the Midwest, and you see them come over to the East Coast, and it's so like their perception is different, right? Because they're like, oh, I could buy this little box in San Francisco for $2 million, and you're telling me I could buy this thing, right, for $600,000? Like the perception is different, so they're willing to buy it for more, right? And you make a good point, buy and hold versus a fix and flip. So build a big list would be my advice.
And sell to the West Coast. Sure.
Yes.
Just to add on to that question, if you're sending like a property to like a big list, how do you handle confidentiality with like an NDA and like kind of taking into consideration like speed with like NDAs and non-disclosures and just trying to get the property sold? How do you handle that?
Yeah, so I would say fundamentally, as a wholesaler, an NDA shouldn't be terribly necessary if I actually control the rights to the property. Then I don't need to necessarily worry about who knows about it. But let's talk about the concern that you're trying to address. I've got the thing under contract for a good deal. I tell a bunch of people that they can buy it, and they go run over to the house and bang on the door and say, hey, I'd give you $80,000 for this house instead of 20, right? You probably don't want that hassle if you can avoid it, whether you're legally right or not, right, in your offer. So that would be the argument against building an enormous list of everybody that you just throw everything out to. But technically, fundamentally, your rights are your rights, and your contract rights are enforceable. Your contract rights are recordable. You can cloud title by recording your purchase contract in the courthouse of whatever jurisdiction that the house or property is located in. You've now created a cloud on title where they couldn't just sell it to somebody else, because when that somebody else comes along and they try to buy it out from under you for a couple bucks more, and seller's like, oh yeah, forget that guy, I'm gonna now sell it to you, they go to pull title on it to go to closing that. Well, who's this other guy that's recorded a contract that says they get to buy it, right? So you can protect yourself that way in other ways besides just non-disclosure, because non-disclosure doesn't really do anything to prevent an unscrupulous person from going around you. The thing that prevents the unscrupulous person from going around you is you saying, this is what I do for a living. I will find out if you go around me, and you will never hear about another one of these deals again. So screw me out of one and lose $1 million, right? That's what I see from the wholesalers that I deal with. It's like, by the way, you can go see it when we say you can go see it, but if we tell you don't go see it, do not go knocking on the door, driving around, circling, looking creepy in front of these houses. We'll tell you what the rules are for going to see it, and if you break our rules, you don't get any more deals.
Okay, let's talk about some of the tactics that we see out there among some of the investors. Like, I'm sure, you see some tactics out there. I'm curious, like, what are some of the tactics that you see that might be a little like, right?
Are we talking about dealing with wholesalers in directly, like trying to go behind the wholesaler's back?
Well, just in general, like, what do you think people have to be aware of, or what have you seen some? Like, I'll go first on this, right? Like, I've seen where people say that they have a property under contract, but they don't, and what they're doing is they're actually testing the market to see what the market is willing to buy it for, and then they will go ratify the contract. They'll say, I got this property under contract, right? So I've seen that quite a bit.
That's very dangerous.
Right?
Especially if you're an agent. You can lose a license for that.
So that's actually a good point and point of concern. If you are licensed, you do want to make it very clear what conversation you're having with someone and what service or solution you're offering, right? Because I think once you've started a conversation with, hi, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I'm an agent, I'm a realtor, and oh, I also buy houses, and oh, I can also help you find a buyer. If you cloud the discussion that way, you can open the door to someone later saying, well, I was confused or I was misled because this person said they were going to help me sell the house, and then they turned out and they put the house under contract and sold it to somebody else. There are rules and laws and regulations against
disclosures.
That sort of thing.
The disclosure is the biggest.
Disclosure is the big thing. You have to disclose what role it is you're playing at this moment when we're having this conversation, especially when you're signing a thing. This is our role, and I believe there are oftentimes disclosure rules where even if you hadn't said anything about agency, you have to still say in the paperwork, by the way, I am a licensed realtor.
Yeah.
And that's it.
That's a disclosure.
That's
Yep,
job
right.
done,
Yeah.
but that is part of the process for you if you are a licensed agent buying property.
Yeah, it's just disclosure.
Yeah.
I'm not.
So if you get into the wholesale world, you'll see, one, just the network is big as wholesalers, and you can start to connect with a lot of wholesalers. When you're buying from wholesalers, the one thing you look for, it's not necessarily wrong, but it'll shock you if you find out after the fact, is something called a daisy chain.
Mhm.
So sometimes there's 2 or 3 wholesalers making a fee on the one transaction. So
Jordan's doing that a little bit right now.
and there's nothing wrong with that, right? But it's just understanding where you are in that, because am I paying 1 fee? Am I paying 5 fees across? Ultimately, if it's still a deal for you at the end buyer, then okay. But you're looking for things like I'm the direct buyer on this. Like that usually means the original wholesaler. And if that wholesaler doesn't have a big dispo list, then they go to another wholesaler, and that wholesaler maybe doesn't have the deal, but they have a big distribution list, and they're going to pay them a fee or split the fee or let them tack on another fee on top of that.
Yeah.
And so I've seen upwards of 4 different wholesale fees on one deal. The deal still makes
Yeah,
sense.
like
but
Janae, the one I told you about, remember in DC, and you were like, oh, I potentially have a buyer for that. Like, he has it under contract. He's supposed to settle by the 14th. He said, you find somebody. I'm like, what will, what kind of wholesale fee can we get? And he's like, $7,000. I'm like, okay. And I sent it to you, right? I don't know if anything's, I just thought about it because he said it, right? But that's what he's talking about, right? The other important piece is pulling title as a wholesaler, right? Why would you want to do that?
Yeah, so you hopefully are dealing with people who have the right and ability and financial ability to actually sell the thing for the price that they told you that they're willing to sell it for. Eventually, anyone who does end up buying the house will, supposedly, I think, well, I don't know if you can ever avoid it. Let's just say it always happens. Someone does eventually run title on this, right? And anytime there's a loan involved, of course, there's a lot more work done on title and title insurance and that kind of thing. But most everybody who does buy a thing goes to a closing, title attorney, somebody, and says, check the record, make sure that this thing can be sold. So you may want to consider doing it as the wholesaler up front to make sure that you actually have the asset you think you do, a house that can be sold for $60,000 or $50,000 to use our example. What if they owe $90,000 on the thing? Great, yeah, I'll take your $50,000. Well, yeah, but you owe a bank $90,000. You can't sell it to me for $50,000, right? The only way for you to know that, first ask, and a truly motivated seller, by the way, will tell you just about anything you want to know. They'll also try to tell you anything they think you want to hear, but you can ask a question that you might not think, well, I don't know, would they be willing to just ask. How much do you owe on this house? What do you have? Do you have a bank loan? What do you owe the bank? 75? Great. Now I kind of know where we are, or what planets we're on, if we're on the same planet. So if I want to buy it for 50 and you owe 75, we've got to come up with another solution here besides just buy it clean, old-fashioned way. Title defects. You need to know if there are title defects that the seller might not even know about, right? That old gutter guy that they forgot to pay and stiffed 10 years ago. Or we've had cars.
Liens.
We've had cars attached to real estate and they didn't pay old car loans. IRS liens, state tax liens, local municipality liens, water company liens. A lot of this stuff goes away. Did you know that water company liens in most cases don't? You buy that oftentimes as the buyer when you buy the house. Water company knows you're not getting water till somebody comes and pays me. So if seller goes away, we got another sucker coming through the door and they're going to have to pay us this bill to get the water turned back on. So those a lot of times don't get wiped out. All other liens, all liens, are also negotiable. That's a whole other fun thing you can get into as a wholesaler. We've negotiated several things lately.
We just took
not
one from
necessarily for a wholesale, but it could have been a
Could have
wholesale.
been $75,000 second lien that had not been paid on in 5 years. They accepted $7,500, right? And it took a good deal and then made it a great deal.
So that's a thing where you can try to extract extra value or make a deal workable that otherwise wouldn't be. Just know that just because there's a lien on a property doesn't mean that it's insurmountable or can't be negotiated, but you still need to know. So running title is the way for you to know. Having a good investor-friendly title company that you can give a couple bucks to do a bring down, what it's called, bring down of title, to kind of show you who's owed what on this property, is a handy thing to have.
So the title company does that negotiating for you?
No.
Okay.
Absolutely not. They will just tell you who's owed, and then you go find out what they're owed and what they might be willing to take on what they're owed.
Medical debt will take things at pennies on the dollar. Things that haven't been paid on in a long time, they will negotiate, right?
And the more obscure sounding the name is, typically the more likely they are to take a deal. If it's like Financial Settlement Services Inc., you know that's like the fifth guy in the row that's bought that debt, and every time they buy it, they pay less and less and less. So their payoff is that much lower. And you throw $7,500 at the guy. If it was a debt service that bought it for $5,000 last month, $2,500 on your $5,000 in 30 days is a pretty good return.
Yeah.
They'll take that deal.
Yeah.
So that's why doing those title bring downs is a good thing. But mostly you just need to know if you can sell it. And your end buyer is going to want to do it anyway, and you can actually speed up the process if you've started it. Remember, this is your deal. You're selling it. You get to dictate the terms. So, hey, Mr. Investor Buyer, if you want to buy my deal, you're going to close at this title company. Most of the title work is already done. Here's how much they're charging you. Maybe it's a couple bucks above street value because they're my favorite title company. They do me favors, but you're fine. You want this deal. you'll pay what they charge. You get to dictate those terms as the wholesaler if that buyer wants that deal.
Okay, I'll tell you, I think people learn best from stories, right? So I'll just tell you a quick story of how I learned my lesson on this. Put a property under contract. We negotiated, the deal. We send it to the title company. Title company goes, this is a blanket mortgage. There's 3 other properties on, this particular property. And they will not take out this property to sell it separately, because it then messes up with their valuation. I had paid the wholesaler the money directly, right? Now, it was $500. So it wasn't like the end of the world, but I paid this wholesaler $500. Do you think I got the $500 back? Never got the $500 back. They never were able to sell that particular property. We weren't able to take it out. Property ended up going into foreclosure, right? So I was like, okay, well, I learned a valuable lesson. It cost me $500 to learn that lesson. But that's how I was like, oh, you didn't pull title. And I didn't ask, did you pull title to make sure that you can actually sell this to me? And then I made the mistake of paying him the money directly as opposed to putting it into with a settlement company and an escrow company.
Well, let's talk about that then, because that's important. How the mechanics of how these things go down, right? So I'm a wholesaler. I have a contract with a seller. We've agreed they're selling me this house for $60,000, right? It's going to be worth $100 after you put 10 into it. I then go to you and say, do you want to buy it for 65? We're going to change the math a little bit. You're going to be an aggressive investor. I've got it for 60. You want to buy it for 65. If you say yes, right, now we have to memorialize our agreement. That's the wholesale assignment agreement, right? So after I've got you on paper saying, great, I agree to purchase X property by X date using X title company for $65,000. You sign it, I sign it. Great. Now I've locked in a buyer at 65 for a property that I can buy for 60. Now the jig's kind of up. Eventually they're going to find out what the wholesale fee is. So I say, fine. Here is the...
Well, but step back. You probably put in there some kind of non-refundable number.
So let's say, Rob, in order to control this property...
$5,000. You could just say
in order to
$5,000.
control this property, I require a $5,000 deposit. You okay with that?
Yes.
Great. Just so happens to be the same amount as my
fee.
wholesale fee. Doesn't have to be. I got to ask them to put down 50 and I'm only making 5. I can actually put down 500 and I'm going to make 5,000. They don't have to match, but in the instance that it does, you agree to a $5,000 EMD, earnest money deposit with me. My deal with the seller, again, could be completely different. I could be giving them $5.
Where do I send my money, Mark?
A handshake? I don't know about a handshake. Don't pay attention to handshake. Give them something, even if you don't actually hand them the $5. Rob, you are going to put down $5,000. The way I recommend doing it is to say you put your $5,000 at the title company. I expect it to show up at the title company that I'm telling you within 48 hours. If the money's not there in 48 hours, our deal is off and I'm calling the next guy on the list. You good with that?
I'm good with that.
So sign the agreement agreeing to a $5,000 earnest money deposit going to the title company of my choosing, of my direction, with settlement on or before X date at $65,000. Signs that, that goes to the title company. The EMD goes to the title company. Your original contract with the seller goes to the title company. And now you have a process whereby Rob can step in as me under the terms of my contract and buy my seller's house over here. And then when that happens, my paperwork says when we go to closing on that property and the closing has happened and you are now the owner, the title company will be authorized to immediately release to me the wholesale fee. You don't have to tell them at that point what the fee is. Eventually they will see it. Eventually you do get a HUD or an ALTA or some kind of statement that says, here's what the seller is actually selling the house for. So after that paperwork's been signed, I then say, by the way, you're going to send it to the title company. They're going to release my X, my $5,000, whatever it is. As the buyer, Rob shouldn't care what I make, right? I don't care what the wholesaler is making. You've offered me a property for $65,000 that I'm willing to pay. Good for you if you got it for $5 and you're making $60. Doesn't matter, right?
Yeah,
but
you and I paid $100,000 to somebody in this room a couple years ago.
Sure did.
Got us a wholesale deal.
Happy for them. They made good money. So once you have that agreement signed, then it is okay to say, and by the way, once this deal gets done, they're going to release me my $5,000 wholesale fee or my $10,000 wholesale fee or whatever it is. The mechanics of the paperwork then at the closing table will be, Mark has property under contract with seller A over here for $60,000. Rob is bringing to the table $65,000 to buy this property. Down over here then on the buyer side, we'll say $5,000 to Mark's Wholesaler LLC. And that in most cases ends up on that Alta paperwork that the seller that I had my original deal with will see and sign. So that oftentimes brings up a lot of questions. Well, what am I going to do when the seller finds out that I'm making money and somebody else is buying it? First of all, it's never, ever been an issue, but the most that we've ever had to say about it is at the time that you're putting the house under contract with the seller. As I said, you're probably going to be getting a couple calls here in the not too distant future with people lining up all the paperwork. That will have to be signed. It's going to be super easy. They'll come to you. If you want to get the stuff done in this house, they'll do it in this house. If you're out of state, they'll send it to where you are. Anything that's got to be like notarized, we'll work all that stuff out. It's going to be super easy for you. And as you may know, it takes a village to get this kind of stuff done. I have partners. You may see another name on the thing. I bring other people in. I have to sell partnership shares and the thing. It takes a lot of money to do this. I raise money. All the money is green. It all gets paid to you itself.
Just to make it simple, it's like it's a partnership, right? And you look at your rehabber as a partner, right? And you just describe to people, it's my partner in the deal, right? And this is part of my partnership fee that I'm getting paid.
And that's it.
Then
it doesn't come up again.
Yeah.
But the way it looks typically on the Alta is your end buyer is paying $65. My original contract to the seller is $60, so they're going to get $60. The buyer's bringing $65. That other $5,000 drops down to a lower line that's got your wholesale company name on it. That $5,000 goes to you. The settlement company then collects the money from Rob, gives 60 of it to my seller, and gives 5 of it to me.
Okay, who's confused? You guys got it?
How can you be confused? That's the world's best explanation of how that works.
Okay, so here's the deal. What time is it? 7:30. Okay. Who's got some final questions? Because really what we want you guys to be able to do is, that is wholesaling in a nutshell, right? That's the mechanics of wholesaling, right? Some tools, actually. Let's give people some tools that they might want to know. At some point, they need to come get your spreadsheet later in the when you start talking about rehabbing. That would be a tool, right? Access to the MLS, another tool. PropStream. Who uses PropStream in here? Okay, another tool. What can you do with PropStream? Omni, just explain.
There's data, really data. If you don't have the MLS, a lot of information there, and just pulling a list of where you're going to start the market.
Yeah. Another company called Privy. I don't know if anybody's familiar with Privy, right? Privy is almost like an MLS for investors, and it's an interesting software that you guys might want to look at, right?
What title companies are you tapping to pull leads for?
I have a partnership with Champion Title, so I just have Champion Title. Just call them.
They're big enough to do all the jurisdictions.
Yeah, and I'm like, hey, can you pull title for us?
And if they don't, they'll tell you who does. I don't know if they do Warren County, for instance, but they've got somebody.
They get somebody that does it.
They can get it.
Yeah. It costs $100, $150. If you build a really good relationship with somebody, they'll just do it for you for free. If you've settled with them often enough, so you want to build a relationship with people. What other questions might you have with that? I think that might be it.
Yeah, understanding the finished value of the house, good to know. Understanding how much it might cost to renovate, really helpful.
So the way you would do that is if you're completely new and you're like, hey, how do I understand what the value is of renovation? I would actually find a contractor and pay them for their time and walk them through a house. Like, you could even be like, you find a house on the MLS that says as is, and maybe they're having an open house, and you take the contractor with you and be like, hey, would you spend an hour with me walking through what kitchen, bathroom might cost, roof might cost, flooring might cost? How'd you come to that? And they will educate you. There will be people that will educate you, right? If they're really, really, really like busy and good, the answer is no, they're not going to have time, right? But there's always an up and coming contractor that is willing to educate you.
And Alex Hormozy would tell you everybody has a number. Everybody's time is worth something. You just have to be willing to pay it.
Yeah, sure.
But education is the best money.
Means Mark's got a number.
Everybody's got a number.
That's what that means.
Everybody's got a number.
Okay.
So yeah, understand what it costs, and then understanding what an investor will pay, whether it's the 70% minus ARV or what. Just asking investors what they would pay for a thing. Find out what an investor is willing to pay. That's your bogey. Anything under that is what you make, and the rest of it is just paperwork and mechanics and getting it to place.
I'll leave one last thing, and then we'll do our networking piece, right? And I learned this from the guy that did the $500,000 wholesale fee, and it was interesting because they didn't really look at like the valuation the way we look at it. What they would do is they would go into the MLS, and they would find the investors who bought properties in that area and figure out what they bought those properties for, and then they would just go to them, and they had a general idea of what they already bought those assets for, so they would just go to them and be like, okay, I think if we lock it up for this, we could probably sell it to them for that number, which was really smart, right? And Privy gives you the ability to do that. PropStream gives you the ability to, like, you could go and find out who's bought what in what area. It also allows you to be able to buy, like if you're in Warren County and you're like, okay, who's bought Airbnbs in this county in the last 60 days, 90 days, and you find out who those people are and you build a list, you put something under contract, you market to them, like you're and you know what they bought that stuff for, you know what you could figure out your margin and your spread pretty quickly. So it's a little hack. Hopefully that's helpful.
Start with the buyer. That's a good idea. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm a newbie.
Sure.
What are the pros and cons to purchase property from wholesalers as a newbie?
What? Say that again?
These are the pros and cons of purchasing from a wholesaler as a new investor. So the pros are it's a deal. It is a good way to find. There are people whose only job is to do the hard stuff. Find that motivated seller, get the thing under contract, and all you have to do is know them. And if it's a deal, then you do it.
But
right?
you need to know what a deal is, and as a newbie, you have a hard time understanding what a deal is.
That's the con. The con is you can't just trust when somebody brings you a thing and says, this is a great deal. I think you can fix this house up for $40,000 and sell it for $1 million. That's the rub. You need to have enough knowledge to know if you're looking at a deal.
Yeah, so you need to know values. Yeah. You need to know values.
Correct. That's the con.
Any last questions? You guys good? Totally understand. Cookie, you got it?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, guys. Well, this is the part where I'm going to encourage all of you to network with each other. Like, and when I tell you, here's the thing. Some people come and they learn and then they leave. And let me tell you, that's a disservice because really it's the relationships. I want you guys to like exchange information, put each other in a CRM, because it's the cup of coffee, it's the conversation that creates deals. That's how this happens, right? The worst thing you could do is just get information. You guys could go on YouTube and get this information. Make sense?
You can go on gridinvestor.com and watch replays of past
yeah, that's right. But you learn a little bit more every time. But the real power is, who can I meet tonight? Who can change the trajectory of my life through a conversation? That happens. That happens.
I met a pretty cool person in this room.
Oh, that's right. That's got it right.
Yeah, it's a good thing.
Yeah, it's a good thing.
For sure.
Okay, guys.
All right. That's all right.
Yeah.
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Yeah.